Hi, Funmi. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you. Debbie, how are you doing?
I'm blessed. Thank you so much for asking. And I'm happy that finally we are able to get this done. I know it took a while before I could get this time. And
Sure.
today we want to talk about how parents can start having sex conversation with their kids.
Mm-hmm.
And before we dive into the topic for today, the discussion, the interesting one, sex conversation, I would
Absolutely.
first like you to introduce yourself because I know a lot of people will be watching this video. I know you're quite all right, but a lot of people don't know you. So please, let's get to meet you for me.
Thank you, Debbie. It's my pleasure to be here. Like you said, finally we're able to meet together and have this conversation. We've been trying to schedule and a lot of things here and there. So my name is Funmi Alagbe. I am a wife and the mother of two children, and I'm passionate about parenting and helping children to make the best decision in life. So with that, I started Parenting Grace, which Debbie and I worked closely together when we were doing in-person workshops.
Yeah.
So for parents, and we had those workshops. So the aim and the mission is to equip parents with knowledge and tools for effective parenting and to inspire children to maximize their potential. So that's what we've been doing at different level. We're starting educating parents with our workshop webinars and trainings. So now, because of COVID and all that, we do most of the things online.
Yeah.
And one of the courses we did time passes on sex education, how to enlighten children, how parents can overcome the reluctance to talk to their kids about sex. So we support parents, and that's basically what we've been doing and will continue to do. So I don't know if there's any more thing I need to say.
Yeah, and absolutely, that has been amazing. And for me, in your introduction, you talked about parents have been reluctant in having this conversation with their kids. And I think that's going to take me to the first question that I have today. And that is, I've actually noticed that a lot of parents shy away from this conversation. They shy away from having this conversation with their children. They try to avoid it. So there are two things that I would like to know now. The first thing is, why do you think parents shy away from having this conversation with their children? And why do you think it's important? Because I feel if we know that it's important, whether we are confident about it, we would definitely go into it. So why do you think parents shy away? And why do you think having this conversation is important?
Yeah, thank you, Debbie, for that question. Very important question, which is always where we start from. I think I'll start from the later question, which is why it's important. So let's start from there, because if the value of a thing is not known, abuse is inevitable. The reason why you have to do it, if you don't know, so you won't even have the willpower to start. So let's start with why is it important? We know the world we live in right now, with a lot of increased globalization, interconnectivity, with technological advancements and all that, a lot more children are living in the online world right now than in the days where we grew up. And there's a lot of things that children are bombarded with, both online and offline, in person, and where the lot of information that children are having, that they are increasingly getting exposed to things that you would never have thought that children their age will be exposed to. And this is the reality of the world we live in right now. And if you look at with COVID striking us about 1 or 2 years ago, we see the increase in cases of rape, abuse, sexual violence, and all that all over the world, not only in North America or Africa, it's everywhere. And this is not that it's just happening, it's now happening at an increased rate. It just shows us the problem that is inherent in our society that we as a society have not started to talk about. So in the world where our children are knowing much more than we knew when we were growing up.
Yeah.
Take, for instance, when we were growing up, if I'm curious about a particular question about sexuality, the best I can do is to ask, if I have that confidence and boldness, I'll ask somebody around me. If I'm bold enough, I will ask my parents. Or at worst, I will get a dictionary. I want to check it. Because how many of us had those internet access and all those when we're growing up? So, and we are curious to know things. And children these days also are also curious. They want to know. But in today's world, if a child has a question around sexuality, it's so easy. It is so easy to get a phone, a laptop, or something and Google. That's the world we're in right now. So children are exposed to a lot more information than we can ever think or imagine. And if we think they don't know, they know much more than we think. So it is important for us as parents to start to have this conversation, to bring these to the limelight, to preempt this conversation, to start to engage our children, because they're exposed to things on the internet, the mainstream media, the TV, the internet, the movies they watch, the contemporary musics, everything have a lot of sexual content in it. And now, today, you don't have to be looking for those sexual information before they even come to you. So it's like they're looking for you. They're the ones looking for our kids. They're seeking them. So kids are bombarded with a lot of information, a lot of things around sexuality that we have to start to preempt. We have to be the first, because if they hear our voices first, and our values, it gives them a frame of reference. When they now see a lot of things outside, they can look at it through what their parents have told them and make a better decision. And the second question you asked is, why are parents reluctant? Like I said, when we're growing up, we had, there's this cultural taboo around sexuality. And it's still prevalent in many countries, many parts of the world today, that is a topic people don't want to talk about. It's a topic we are uncomfortable about, right? Because there's all that taboo around it. In those days, when a child is curious about sexuality question that we're talking about, they don't even have the courage to ask their parents. For those kids that even have the courage, when they ask their parents, they are usually shut down and said, you will hear, why you ask that question? You're not old enough to know it. So when time comes, you know, things like that. Or the child might not even have that boldness to ask. So that's the thing. Yeah. And it stays there, and they never come back to explain that thing to that child. So in those, because we're not comfortable, and we think children should not know. But kids are curious to know, and they need this information. So many parents don't have a model of somebody talking to them about this. Nobody spoke to me about it. So I don't have a model of this is how I should go about it. And plus, it is something that is really not comfortable to talk about. So I would rather keep it under the carpet. I would rather not talk about it. So parents are reluctant about it. And another thing parents think that if you tell kids about this, it will increase curiosity in them to want to experiment. Whereas research has told us that that is not true. So when kids become curious and you answer their question in an age-appropriate way, you really help them to you really take out that curiosity, because then they know that, oh, you already given them an answer and there's no big deal about it. But when you start to hide things and you don't want to tell them, that is the reason why they're more curious. Why are they not talking about this? I need to search more. I need to dig in deep. But parents think that by talking to the kids, it will increase their curiosity and expose them unnecessarily. If you do it in an age-appropriate way, research has told us that kids want to hear from their parents, and talking to children about it is the best thing we can do for them. Yeah. Another reason is that parents don't know where to start or what to say. And what I usually say is that if we increase our own knowledge about it, starting will be easier. We know what to say. We know the basic thing to say. So it will be easier for us to talk about it. Let me stop there.
Thank you, Funmi.
You're welcome.
You actually reminded me of a book that I read recently, Standing in Gap for Your Kids. And in that book, I realized that the devil is not smiling at our kids. He's out there to attack them, because he knows that they are the future, right? They hold the future of tomorrow. I mean, the future is in their hands. And more reason why parents need to be intentional about their kids, right? So I feel that awareness, when the child is aware of all those things, it also helps them to be prepared.
Absolutely.
Right? And I remember during my own time, rather than talking to my parents, I would rather talk to a friend. What if a friend does not even know or has wrong answer? That means that I'm also negatively informed, and that could lead to taking so many wrong steps. So
Absolutely.
I think from what you said, parents need to take the bull by the horn and start making steps towards having that conversation with their kids. And you also talk about when to start this conversation. So I would like to know, when is the realistic way of starting this conversation? I actually wanted to have this with my son and my nephew, but it was kind of difficult. Where do I start from? How do I start? So what is the realistic way, the practical way of starting this conversation without, there is a way you can start this conversation. It will make this child to be, reserved, not opened, and like, what is mommy talking about here? So how do you start this conversation in such a way that you are engaging the kids?
Okay, good question, Debbie. So what I would say is that it is usually best to start this conversation as early as possible.
Thank you.
When kids start to talk, and from say age 3, 5, and all that, depending on the maturity of that child. So within that window, it's usually advisable to start. And many people hear that will be like, whoa, what do you want to be talking about sex with children that age? No, because there's a lot of aspects about sexuality that it's not only about man and woman sleeping together. That's not what we're talking about per se, but there's a lot of components, and you have to start early. Start early talking to kids about their bodies, privacies, boundaries, and things like that, body safety rules. Those are the things you start with. And you, as kids are learning and gathering their vocabularies, they are knowing their body parts, their hands, their faces, you start by not using pseudo words for their private parts, because parents make that mistake. We use pseudo words. Instead of saying, oh, your vulva or your vagina, we say, oh, cookies or things like that. There's a lot of different names that people, because it's coming from that culture of shame, of we shouldn't go there. And if we are going to have open conversation with our kids, you want them to come to us and ask us questions when they are troubled or when they hear something from their classmates. We need to be able to lay the foundation for that open conversation. And it starts from when we start to name the body parts the right way. The right name that's given to it is what we should call it. If we can say hand and we don't give pseudonyms for hands, then for their penis, we shouldn't give pseudonyms, because there's nothing that, if I say hands, I can say penis without attaching anything to it. We adults are the ones that propagate that shame. And if we start to say, oh, don't go there, don't mention it, don't talk about it, and kids get the message that, oh, there's something secretive about this. And that's where that secrecy comes from. That's where they cannot open up their shame as well. So we propagate the culture of shame down the generation. So in this day and age, what we need to do is to start to talk to our kids as early as possible. Talked about, well, what is private, what is public, how they should keep themselves, how they should cover their privacy. It's not meant for everybody. It's not meant to be touched unnecessarily or things like that. So you tell them about body parts and privacy, boundaries. That's where you start from. And when you start, that kids are comfortable telling you about all this and conversing with you with the right terminologies, you can build on that foundation as they grow old. Sometimes for some parents, their kids have grown maybe like 7, like 8, and they haven't started this conversation. That does not still mean that we cannot start that conversation. It's never too late. But in that situation, you still start the conversation, but you need to let the kids know and come to them and say, oh, you know what? I read this book, or I attended this webinar, or we're talking about some friends with my friends, and we realized that this is an important conversation to start to have. I know I have not been talking about it with you because I was not quite ready. And I think you were not ready as well. So right now, I think you're ready to start to know about these things. So you will hear me starting to talk about these and these and these in the house. So when you come from that angle, let the kids know that this is an important conversation to have. And then you will start and say, you can ask questions about their school, their friends. That's a non-confrontational way to start that conversation. What do people in your kids, in your school say? Did they, because a lot of children are hearing a lot of things that you will never imagine.
Yeah.
You will never imagine. But if we have not given them a template or given them a kind of an image that shows that we are open to have that conversation, that nothing is off the table. We need to give them, we need to pass that message across. Once they get that, they will be able to come to us freely. I'll say, I had this in school. A child was saying this in the playground, Mommy, what does that mean? You want them to come to you. And if you don't start that conversation, they will never come to you. They will rather ask their friends or go and Google it.
We started the conversation with them, right?
Yeah, because they see that mommy and daddy has never spoken to me about this kind of thing. I can't even ask them. But if they know that you've been talking about it without there's no big deal. And we are the one that will propagate that shame. The way we talk about it, if you feel uncomfortable, they will feel uncomfortable. So if we feel comfortable about it and we talk about it while we are doing other activities, you're cleaning, you're saying, you know what, this is what people do. This is, you talk about any aspect of sexuality with them. It's just seen as a normal conversation. So it can be organic in our home. And that's where to start.
Yeah, I think. Absolutely. And Funmi, I want to correct me if I'm wrong. You talk about privacy here. And I think even as parents, we need to help our kids to cover up these parts. I remember recently, because of the weather being hot here, I was dressing my girl, and what she was supposed to wear was a bit open at the back. And she was like, Mom, I can't wear this thing. It's open. And I didn't see anything wrong in the back being open. Yeah. And because we were home, and she was like, Mom, I'm not going to wear this thing. And that's actually dawned on me that if I'm telling her that you need to keep yourself, then I also need to be very, very careful in the things that I allow her to wear. And not just with my son, even with the boy. So if I'm telling you that this part is a no-go area, or this part, I'm also using this
private part.
I think I should call it what it is, like you said.
You have to start to get comfortable with yourself.
Your breast is private.
It's a private part, yeah.
Then I should also help teach these kids to cover up this part.
Absolutely. So we have to do that as well. We need to let them know, and based on the environment. And there's something we always say, that use teachable moments. Use what we see in the environment to really pass on your own values. So if some parents might not see anything wrong in their kids going about half naked, but if in your own family we don't do that, you say that it's not uncommon for you to see people go about with like something like almost like pants. But in our homes, we don't do that because we believe these are private parts and they should be protected and covered. So we use what we see outside to let them know, and to let them know where we stand. And that's very important. So your child saying, oh, I cannot wear that, she already know that, oh, this is, I can't wear, even though she's at home. But you now have to let them know, oh, you are at home, you're within your family. It's okay because of the heat to wear that, just like sleeveless and things like that. So just need to guide.
And I think that is where family value comes in. Maybe that will be another discussion for another day. So Funmi, I would like to know if there are limits to what we can discuss with our kids. We've already agreed that we don't have to shy away from having this conversation. We've talked about the importance of having this conversation. Now, should there be boundaries or limits to what we are discussing with the kids?
Absolutely. There should always be boundaries and limits, because kids are ready for certain information at different ages. That is why sex conversation has to be age appropriate. So when a child asks what is sex, if a 5-year-old asks that question and a 9 or 12 years old has that question, you might, 12 years old, you might be ready for more detail than a 5-year-old. So a 5-year-old, you can just answer as simply as possible using biological information. And most times kids are okay with just those simple information. And because we're able to answer them in a non-confrontational or judgmental or in a very easy, free atmosphere, they are fine and they go. But so they see you as a reliable source of information that they can always come to you. So you give them that information. But if a child that is older asks that same question and you answer just basic, you might see that child wanting more information, but I don't get it. So depending on the curiosity of that child, so you will really know by their response if they are fine with that information or they require more. And that's where you now add additional layer of information. But when we talk about sex to kids, it has to be age appropriate.
Yeah.
It has to be what is around their age that is okay and basic for them. And most time when kids ask, where do babies come from, for example, they're not interested in, many parents are taken aback. How do I answer that question? And they will kind of like find a way to shy away from it, dodge the questions.
And all that. They have a baby.
Things like that. So, but because our adult mind is already thinking, what will I say? The child is not interested in the sexual aspect of life. The child is simply curious. They just want to know. You went to the hospital, you brought baby, or a neighbor just had a baby. Oh, where did this baby come from? They just want to know. They are not interested in the sexual aspect. But as with our own adult mind, we will have multiplied and overthink the question, and then because of that, we'll shy away. So you just need to answer basic question. Oh, you need a part from a man and a woman to make babies. So the baby grow in the woman's womb, and then the baby is delivered in the hospital. The doctor helps to deliver the baby, and that's all. So it's not something big. It's not a big deal. But if we use our adult mind to interpret their questions, then we'll start to think, oh my God, how do I answer this question? Yeah. So I think there has to be boundaries, there has to be limits, it has to be age appropriate.
Yeah, and I also think parents need to be open. You've actually talked about that. You reminded me a time when my girl said, Mom, can we go to Walmart to buy a baby? That is our own understanding. That's okay. And I was like, I didn't get you from Walmart, right? Neither did I get your brother from Walmart.
I've seen baby on the rack. I would like to go carry one, actually.
If it is easy, I could have just gone and buy, So it's actually coming from the innocent.
Yeah.
The children are innocent, right? So if they ask such questions, actually coming from the intention to learn or just out of curiosity, like you said. And we as parents too need to be open about it. And like you said, it has to be age appropriate. What an 8-year-old child can digest is different from what a 3-year-old child can digest. Absolutely. And as well as a teenager. All right. So I know that we've already discussed so many things, and I have just one more question. And that is, as parents, can we be overly protective of our kids? Because I've heard kids say, oh, I want to go for sleepover, I want to have a play date, and all of those things. And I tell you sincerely, so many kids have been exposed to so many things from sleepover, and as parents, you keep saying no, 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 no. So can we be overly protective of our kids?
Yeah, it's possible for parents to want to be overly protective of their children, and I wouldn't blame any parent for doing that. And this stems from experiences and what they've seen and what they've heard. But that being said, there has to be a balance, because you don't want to be parenting from fear.
Yeah.
So when we are parenting from fear, we'll be overly protective, and there's a limit to how much you can do that. So I believe striking a balance is very important. You need to really take it a situation by situation and analyze and see, in this particular situation, take, for example, your child wants to go for your play dates. You need to look at, where does the child wants to go? Who are those people? Who are those family? Do I know them? Do I trust them? Do we share the same values? Am I confident that my child will be protected while in that place? So a lot of things have to come in place. You need to really take it situation by situation and analyze. And when you deemed it fit that, oh, I think it's okay for my child to go here, then you allow the child to go. You need to leave parent from faith, and you have to take calculated risk. So after you've analyzed that and say, I think it's okay for the child to, oh, they're only going to do a play date and it's going to be outdoor or even indoor, and I know the parents are there, I trust them, you can allow. But if you look at another situation and you think, I can't really answer yes to most of my questions, I have some concerns in this area, then you might want to say, I think no. And then the child will want to ask you why.
Yeah.
You need to really find a way to really let them know. I think it's not yet, environment is not yet right for you to go at it. Maybe some other time we'll look at it again. You need to find a way to let them know. So I think we should take it situation by situation and not just use a wild blanket and just apply one rule to everything, that every situation, because I believe every situation is different. So it's possible for us as parents to be overly protective, but I think we also need to take time to train our children to really help them learn so that they can make the right decision for themselves when we are not there. Because it is in that they develop their own maturity. So if we continue to protect them, there's a time that you're not going to be able to do that. So you need to be able to have prepared the kids for different scenario, different situation or environment they could be in, and how they should react. For instance, you can in your house have internet filtering device that's block unwanted content from internet and all that. And your child is going to someone else's house to go play, and you're not sure if they have that kind of thing. Will you say, you cannot go to this person's house anywhere? You cannot just go anywhere. You must always stay in my house. No, you don't want your kids to go without socializing, without mixing with people, without visiting friends, because that also helps them to build certain skills. But in that way, you need to prepare them that, we need to talk about exposure. And so I talking about sex, talking about pornography is another layer on top of talking about sex. So for instance, exposure to pornography, you have discussed that in your home, you are filtering devices and all that. Then you need to let your kids know that if you don't go to somebody else's house and this happens, what will you do? If you're playing a game or whatever, what will you do? So they need to have exposure plans. All these components we discussed in our online course about how to talk to your kids about sex. You need to have exposure plans for your children so that when accidental exposure happens, what should they do? And then how should they report to you? So, but if they have not prepared them that it could happen outside of your home, it could happen in school, it could happen anywhere, but you want to raise kids that are ready to take it on when that thing happens, not kids that are in bubbles. You're protecting them, you don't want them, you can't do that for too long. So I think striking a balance is very important.
Yeah, thank you, Funmi. And that takes us back to the first question I asked about parents having this conversation. And from what you said, it's never too late to start, right? If parents have not been doing it, it's never too late. And you can start as early as 3 years old from what you said. Yeah, having this conversation, prepare the kids, it makes them aware of the danger out there and helps them to protect themselves. Even when we parents are not there, they can protect themselves. And one thing I would like to also know before we draw the curtain is you talked about featuring devices. How do you have any idea of how parents can go about this? Because I'm so sure that a lot of people have been asking questions around this featuring devices.
Yeah, that's very, absolutely. That's very important. I strongly recommend every family should have a filtering device because internet is like everywhere right now. It's like all sorts of things are coming at us as kids. And it's just like going to a big market and taking your child to that big market and just leaving them to wander around without any guidance. That's what happens when we give them the laptop, the iPad, or whatever devices they're using, and they are surfing the internet without anybody being there or guiding them without any restriction. So every family should have internet filtering device at this a time and age. And there's a lot of benefit to that. It blocks unwanted content. So there are some things, there's some restricted content that cannot be shown to the kids because you have that device and you have changed that privacy, that setting. It helps you monitor how long your kids are staying on the internet, because according to that research, people spend more time on the internet than they ever think. And if you ask them, how long do you think you'll spend? They will say maybe 2 hours, but they have spent 5 hours.
5 hours.
so people don't know, but you will never have an idea how much kids are spending if you don't have a metric, you don't measure. So now with that kind of device, you can say, oh, per day, I only want 1 hour. And once it's 1 hour, it turns off. You can regulate that and they can use the rest of their time, invest it in something else worthwhile, reading, writing a story, or doing something. So we are raising a well-balanced and rounded kids, not overly on video games or internet or screens, because it's very easy for us to also let go, because that gives us some time to do other things when they are engaged, but you want to control that. So you can also set bedtime. You can turn it off, that is not working. So they cannot access it. You help them to know that this is not somewhere you can just go and anywhere, or anything can pop up. It blocks adverts and things like that that has sexual content and all that. So it's a form of protecting and guiding our kids in this day and age. So I think I recommend every parents to have some sort of internet filtering device for themselves and for their kids.
Thank you, Funmi. Thank you so much. We've said a lot today, and I think it's been very informative, and I'm so sure that a lot of people watching this video is going to gain so many things from it. Thank you so much, Funmi, for making our time to have this discussion. And I tell you, like I said, it's been an insightful and informative section. Thank you so much. And
you're welcome.
I hope to see you again. And I hope the next time is not going to take so long.
Hopefully. Thank you so much, Debbie. It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Funmi. And for those watching this video, it's not just enough watching. Nothing happens if you don't do anything about what you've learned. Please, as much as possible, start having this conversation with your kids. And I'm going to put Funmi's social media handles on the description in case you have any question regarding what we've discussed in this video. So thank you so much, and I will see you in my next video.
Bye.